live A-Day preview. Appreciate all of you tuning in today. Just excited to be with you today. We can go on and do something a little different. We haven't done the live show in quite a while. We've been doing a lot of the podcasts and everything, but it's great to see everybody out there is watching. You can always comment if you got any questions. I'll be able to answer. We got a great program lined up for you today. A little bit later, we have a special guest, Martin Houston, is going to join us. Martin has been so good to me to have me on his show every Tuesday morning and getting my content out there, and I really appreciate him. And he's producing this show for me today, so it'll go live on my platforms and also out there on his platforms with Max Sports. So I really appreciate Martin Houston, Xavier, and Max Sport for really producing this and allowing us to go live today for A-Day. And he'll be up in just a little while. We'll have him on the show. But before we get to that, I want to thank a couple of people. I want to thank Lance Shores. Lance always is a producer of all my podcasts for the DC Capstone Report. He does a great job producing it. And he has been able to get this, I hope, out on his platforms such as RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com. I want to put a word in for Lance here. If you ever want to see some great pictures of any of the Alabama sporting events, Lance does a great job. He's a great photographer, does a great job of covering that. And you can always find them at freelancepictures.com or rolltidebama.com. I've spoken with Lance. I know he's going to be down for the A-Day game. So if you want to get some good shots of the A-Day game, he'll have those up on his sites after sometime that night or the next day following A-Day. So always want to thank Lance and his two sites, RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com. If you're out there listening today, I would love for you to visit those sites and just kind of have an idea of what he does and a lot of great Alabama football, Alabama sports content on Lance's sites. And love to thank Lance for all he does for the DC Capstone Report. Also want to mention our newest sponsor this year for our DC Capstone Report podcast. We have a new sponsor this year. It's a realtor named Karen Cottingham. She is sponsoring all of my live feeds and my podcast this year for the DC Capstone Report. Karen's a realtor here in Tuscaloosa. She can take care of you throughout the state, all throughout the state of Alabama. And if you have any real estate needs, she would love for you to give her a call. Her number is 205-887-4008. Tell her you heard about her on the DC Capstone Report. If you want to get in touch with her and look at some of the houses she's got listed now, you can look at her website at www.karen.thewilliamsgroupal.com. If you want to email her, you can email her at karencottingham@kw.com. Karen's with the Keller Williams Group and the Williams Group here in Tuscaloosa. So if you're thinking about getting a condo for game day, or if you're thinking about you have a child coming to the university and you would like to know more about the housing market here in Tuscaloosa, give Karen a call. That's Karen Cottingham again with Keller Williams and the Williams Group, 205-887-4008. Well, I want to talk a little bit as we get started today about A-Day itself. You know, A-Day I think is a great thing. There's a lot of I guess other commentators out there have said it's a glorified practice, and we all know what A-Day is. It is the last practice year for the Alabama football team, but I think it's a great thing for fans. So I want to encourage you, if you're a fan of Alabama football, this is an opportunity for you to come to the Capstone, to come to the University of Alabama for a football game and get involved and see something that it's cost too much to do most of the time. So you can bring your children, bring your grandchildren to Tuscaloosa tomorrow. I checked the website for the forecast. James Spann says it's going to be a good day for football here in Tuscaloosa. So I think A-Day games are important, not only for the players, not only for the coaches, but also for the fans to get to do something they normally don't do. It's free admission. So come early, get involved in the game, enjoy a game, looking at the game of football. I know it's a practice. I know we won't see a lot, but I think A-Day games are important to the players as well, and important to the coaches. Heard from Coach Saban yesterday, and he's talking about dividing the teams up so that the players can have the most opportunity to play, especially those that are vying for positions, and have an opportunity to create value for themselves. And I know that's an important thing for players. And And I don't think anybody can speak to that any better than Martin Houston. Martin's our special guest today, and I think he's in the studio now. And so, as we begin this chat today or this talk today, Martin, a lot of folks out there say it's a glorified practice. A lot of folks say it's it's do away with it and start doing something different. But give us a player's perspective. I think it's great for fans. They get to come and do something that costs a lot of money during the season to come to University, get in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and have access to the players in the game. And so, talk to us just a little bit about from a player perspective. You were here, played on the '92 championship team, have a lot of great memories, I'm sure, from A-Day games and that sort of thing. But what is the A-Day game from a player's perspective?
Well, you have to think about, and David, a lot of times in like all the other sports, man, they have a lot of opportunities to really go in game like situations. Like when you play basketball, when you go out and have a practice and a practice game or whatever, it feels a lot like playing basketball. But you get what 30 something games if you're good. Baseball, man, you get whatever number of games, and you can like make it realistic. In football, the reality of it is all of the off season, all of the summers, all of the practices in the fall all generally relates to what 13 to 14 days, 15 days if you're the best team in the country, plus a spring practice. So first of all, it's a chance for you to put the pads on and go full speed. And so that in and of itself is really, really special. But the other part to me, David, is we don't have a preseason like the NFL. You don't have the the number of opportunities to win a job, and so spring practice is that chance to do that. And A-Day is the culmination of what you've been able to do. In other words, for us, we say, oh, well, it's one versus ones, but it's really not full speed. But if you're one of those guys that's in that top 22 on offense or top 22 on defense, you've accomplished something this offseason that puts you in a position to continue to pursue your goals, your dreams, your desires. So it's still a big deal for the players because it's just a chance to go live, chance to be out in front of the fans, and a reward for a great offseason and a great spring practice.
And not to mention you're playing. If you win, you get steak and baked potatoes, as Coach Saban said yesterday. If you lose, you get to eat off paper plates and you get to eat beans and weenies. So that's a kind of underlying thing that there is some competition for that. But really, what you spoke of, the more competition is there's some competition among players here. I heard a couple of players speak yesterday. Tyler Booker, very well spoken young man out of IMG Academy. He was speaking and he said, hey, when you come to Alabama, I like the A-Day experience because they asked him, hey, some people have talked about playing other teams. What do you think about A-Day? And he said, I like the A-Day experience because when I came here, I wasn't up to speed on everything and speed of the game. And in an A-Day atmosphere, I got to play against the best of the best. On the other side of me was the best of the best playing against Alabama. And I think that we stretch ourselves more when we play in game time atmospheres for that reason against the best of the best before we ever play anyone else. So I think what he was saying was there's really not a small team or another team you could play that would give you the type of game that your own teammates would give you when they're vying for that position. And this year is probably the best for a fan to come and see an A-Day game and really watch some battles. This is probably a year where you're going to have some more battles in an A-Day game than you normally would. There's a lot of positions up for grabs, don't you think?
Yeah, and that's a great view from that young man's standpoint, DC. It is for a lot of these guys their first chance to really see because there's a little bit more juice that happens on A-Day than maybe a regular scrimmage when you're out there playing. And then, as you said, learning the speed of the game and how fast things happen. Uh, it definitely is a very, very positive aspect of what you can learn or pick up from A-Day. So overall, great experience in Alabama's A-Day games. I have to understand, are David, are people wise, attendance wise, are bigger than most players will play in their whole career.
And most definitely, a lot of other smaller conference games will never have that many fans probably in the stands when they play. If you look at some of the other games that are going on out there, if you play against those other teams. So I think um, let's get started a little bit about this game coming up. Martin, what do you? Let's start talking about the coaches. You know, we got two new coaches that's going to lead a defense and an offense. Tommy Reese coming in for offense, and you got uh, a person who's been at the Alabama before is not new, but he's coming back in here to lead the defense in Kevin Steele. But uh, I know you don't see a lot in these games, but what can we expect to see? Tommy Reese is a young guy, new guy, so I think even though it's a vanilla offense, he's going to come in and show what he can do as well, I would believe. And I think everything I've heard in the offseason and in the spring is the players are saying that Kevin Steele has changed the culture back to the Bama standard, and I think that wants to be shown. So, what do you think the average fan that's coming to A-Day could expect to see from these two coaches that are new?
Well, from the offensive side of the ball, first of all, DC, I think I don't think we're gonna see um, everything that Tommy Reese brings to the table, because why would Nick Saban completely show his hand to future opponents and get them a chance to scout and do that so much on that? What I think you will see is, I think you will see them maybe even throw the ball more than you would think, because of the question at quarterback, and it gives a little, I guess, diversion. DC maybe is a good way to say, for the scouts that are looking at it. But I think you will see that the runs that we call will be more call runs than RPO. Um, and I think that is what you're going to see from a player standpoint. You're going to see that a little bit more. Uh, I mean, from a fan standpoint. Then from the defensive side of the ball, man, I just want to see us be well coached, players in the right place, with the right intensity. And I think that when they say he brought that culture back, I think it's a little bit of that nasty that we've kind of, you know, missed. DC, would you say that players would say that they don't fear Alabama?
I, I agree.
And I think that's what he's bringing
And I
back.
think he's brought that back. So that brings me to another coach that's not new, but maybe has a new lease on life on this offense, and that is Eric Wolford on the offensive line. I've
Mm.
heard a lot of things coming out about this offensive line wanting to impose their will. And so I had a quick thought about this, and I think some of our listeners might appreciate your perspective on it. But I think Kevin Steele coming in and challenging the defense has really pushed the offensive line to get more physical. And I believe that's what you're seeing come out in Wolford and in talking about these players who are saying we're actually in practice seeing that Bama standard, getting back that Bama standard. Speak on that just a little bit, because I think sometimes it takes a aggressive defense to bring out the best in your offensive line in practice.
I think without a doubt, I love Tua Tagovailoa, but we can thank Tua Tagovailoa and company for the style of defense we've watched Alabama put out on the field lately. When you practice, you have to practice to um, the standard or the type of offense you run.
Yeah,
DC, if you if you what a lot of people may not recognize is, these offenses that go fast like this, they do that at practice. So, what's one of the fastest ways to get more reps in from a offensive standpoint, DC, is you don't take guys to the
that's
ground.
right.
You know, you keep them upright. You hustle back. So the physicality of what happens in practice, we've seen that, I think, play out in the physicality of what we see on Saturday. And with Steele being there, I think that you now have, first of all, Reese doesn't go as fast, so that part happens. But then him teaching the defense to just be more aggressive, uh, to get in their face, more attacking. From what little bit I saw, it seemed to be a little bit more attacking uh, defense than what we've had in the past. Now, we may not see that tomorrow, DC, but that's what we've seen in the scrimmages. And that, as you said, makes a guy like Wolford really, really hungry. And he's recruited. Look at who he's recruited.
Right.
Like the smallest guy he's recruited may be Booker.
He's
So,
6'6", 309. So
yeah, and he may be the small guy.
right. I,
So it's really
And I
good.
want to, before we transition to getting specific on the offense and defense, I want to just a general observation. I think you would have, knowing you from the old days and the fullback that you were, and the blocking and the getting those tough yards. Something that Tyler Booker said, and I don't know if everybody picked up on it or not, but they were talking to him, and he was a very articulate young man. Really has a head for the game. Really impressed me with his interviews, but he talked about the philosophy of Eric Wolford, and he said that philosophy is translated down to us, and we're more aggressive. But then he said this. He said, "What I mean by that is when there's 3 yards to get, we want to go get it. We don't have. We know we're going to go get it. Oh yeah, that's us. We're going to get that 3 yards." And I don't believe that we've had that mentality over the last couple of years, at least. Matter of fact, I wonder why we call him pass plays inside the 5 yard line with a yard to go, needing a yard. So that talk a little bit about that mentality. What not only what it does for a coach like Wolford, but what does it do for players like the offensive line, but Jace McClellan and the running backs who says I got confidence I can get that 3 yards, and the lineman says I can get that 3 yards, and the coach says, well, I know my players can get that 3 yards. But talk about that, how that kind of rolls over to the whole offensive culture.
It totally, as a player, DC, it totally gets you jacked and pumped up, and you don't think about the counter effect of that. What happens when when an offensive lineman doesn't feel like the coach has confidence in him, and he has to play hesitant, and he has to hold off? So it has not just does it not have a negative effect, it has a positive effect where these guys literally will, I think, be chomping at the bits, anxious to get to a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, 1st and goal at the 5. I think you'll see a little different approach to how we go about our business. Don't mean we're going to run it every time, but the legitimate threat of line it up, pound it in will be there. And therefore, I think you're going to see our tight ends potentially get more of those red zone touchdowns, or the big wide receiver in Benson getting those touchdowns, because everybody's going to be trying to stop the run.
And I think that also translates to something that we didn't talk about last year, but Alabama was gashed for 4 and 5 yard plays. A lot of times we were trying to stop and get off the field on defense. We couldn't stop those. But when you're not running those in practice, and when you don't have an offensive line that's pressuring you in practice, you're not ready for that in the game. So I think that mentality on offense makes our defense that much better. And I think Tyler Booker spoke of that. He said he'd seen a different pop in people like Jamil Burroughs and others on the line, that I win some and he wins some, and we come back and we discuss it afterwards on who gets the better of who. I don't think we had that kind of competition last year amongst our line. Neither one of our lines showed that during the season.
Yeah, and that's what made Alabama great to me. DC was you were, two things always happen, and I'm not sure that it's been a part of the last 2 teams. And one is that you had the best guy. If you didn't do your job, the guy behind you was chomping at the bit to take your spot. And when you were doing your job, you were doing it against the best guy you were going to play against all year. And I think that's what's benefited Kirby over at Georgia.
Yes.
Is that they still have that physical mentality. I remember when everybody went hurry up, DC, Nick Saban said, man, you can't learn to tackle unless you tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you play physical, you can't learn to play physical. I think we got away from that the last 2 years. I've heard that that's back this spring.
And I'll say this, and then we'll transition into the specifics about the offense and defense. But I heard Coach Saban speak on another radio show this week. He was out at North River Yacht Club. The guys from Next Round Live, Ryan Brown, Jim Dunaway, were interviewing him. It was a very casual interview, very good. But I tell you what, something he said he was reading a book on cultures and how people that come in and once a culture established to steal that culture and copy it and steal it. And then he made this statement. He said, I believe that's happened to us the last couple of years. Someone has stole that culture, and now it's time for us to get it back. I believe he was talking about Georgia, that Alabama had stopped being that dominant Bama standard and in practice and games, and Georgia had taken that culture, adopted it, and it really worked for them. What do you think his underlying meaning was in that statement?
Yeah, that book I think was The End of the World is just the
That's
beginning.
right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he was 100% DC saying that he is going to um he I said it on my show, he's back. Okay. And to me, it starts with him,
Right.
meaning that he has to bring that culture back. And I do like the fact that he kind of admitted, hey, listen, there's been a team out there without naming it. I think he was without doubt talking about Georgia. There's been a team out there that's out
That's
Saban,
right.
that's out Bama, out Bama. And I think that's what he was saying. And that whole concept of that book is that when you establish a culture, then everybody else comes to take it. But if you have the right mindset, the end of that culture, when it looks like it's gonna be the end of it, if you take the right steps and do the right things, it can be the beginning of something even better. And I think that's what he was insinuating. So kind of makes it exciting, DC, to think about that.
So that sets it back up for all of you that are listening out there. Again, this is the DC Capstone Report live A-Day preview. And we got our special guest today, Martin Houston.
I think we may have temporarily lost DC. So while we're waiting for DC to reconnect, we're gonna take a quick break. Karen Cottingham, one of his sponsors, we're gonna take just a quick second and highlight her, and we'll be back in just a moment.
All right, Martin, can you hear me now? Am I back online? I think I paused there for just a second.
Yes, you're live.
All right, great. Well, thank you for, we spoke about one of our sponsors, Karen Cottingham. She's a realtor here in town. Thank you for putting that up. Great if you'll just get with her and with all your real estate needs here in Tuscaloosa across the state of Alabama, she can take care of you there. Don't forget to contact her. When you contact her, if you listen to us here, tell her you heard it on the DC Capstone Report or the Mac Sports page here. Want to get right in to the offense side of the ball, Martin, and everybody wants to know about who's going to be the quarterback at the University of Alabama. If you're listening out there and you're coming to A-Day, you're going to watch for the top two. It looks like Jalen Milroe, number 4. Ty Simpson will be number 5. I don't think I looked right until we came on the air. I don't see anything how it's divided yet. Not sure what team they'll be on, crimson or white. But Coach Saban said he was going to divide them up so that everybody can have the most opportunity to create value for themselves and get the most reps. So I don't know what that means. You got a chance to go to one of the practices. I'm sure I've had some people tell me that they're in a couple of the practices been out there that both players have had opportunities to make plays and both players have made mistakes. I don't think that's anything that we wouldn't suspect in the spring games and spring practice. But what do you expect to see out of the quarterback play for the A-Day game?
Well, exciting times if you're a true football fan. There's nothing like a good quarterback battle. First and foremost, I hope that the Bama fans keep this one clean um, and not like we had with Jalen and Tua. Uh, but we do have another Jalen in this, uh, you know, battle. But he slimmed down from what it looks like when I saw him. DC. I think that if Alabama fans go back and watch the Arkansas game and do not watch the I know you everybody say, hey, he started the Texas A&M game. But Saban himself said that we handicapped him in that game.
Yes.
I mean, two ways they handicapped him. First of all, they thought Bryce Young was going to play, and they practiced all week for Bryce Young to play.
Correct.
Bryce took all the first team reps, majority of first team reps, but he just didn't throw the ball. Okay. And they took he's on his shoulder. But DC, I think that Jalen, if you go back and watch that one game where he played and they didn't have time to pigeonhole him or put him in, they just had to go out and play and win, and they called it for him. He looked like a dynamic quarterback. I think he's improved as a passer, and I think play action and run game will help Jalen more than it even helps Ty, because I do think Ty's a better pure passer than Jalen. And so the only thing I warn people about, if it's close, then I'm giving the nod to Jalen, because we won't see what he does with his legs tomorrow.
Right.
That part of his game will be minimized because of the way the game is played.
Yeah, I was going to get to you. You really won't see what he does with his legs because of the no tackling of the quarterbacks, and so he will have a disadvantage. But you know something I heard, Martin, and you can probably tell me if it's true or not. You may have seen him. I've heard that not only is he slimmed down, but I don't know if it's possible, but I've heard that he's even faster, quicker than last year. And last year he was the fastest player on the team.
Yeah, I don't know if he's still the fastest guy on the team, but I saw, put it like this, DC, in a game of touch, they didn't touch him.
Yeah.
On one of the runs I saw. They blew the whistle, DC, but no one would have tackled him when he took off. I mean, they were trying to touch him, and they didn't touch him. So, like I said, I don't know if he's faster or not, but his hips were smoother because he made a couple guys miss without. It wasn't just speed; it was some, in space quickness.
Another thing about him we won't be able to tell in this game is one of the knocks on him has been ball security. We won't know about that in this game because he won't be being tackled. So I think that's something they've been working on in practice, and I think it has showed up in some of the practices that they've had, some live play, that he seems to have done a better job on ball security. That's something to look for is better. And his passing, I think his passing has been better. Everyone I've talked to said his passes downfield have been better in this game. What do you know about Ty Simpson? What can you tell our listeners about Ty Simpson?
Well, first of all, I would say I think I think it was Mark Twain that said the rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. I think the rumors of him not having good ball security have been greatly exaggerated because of what happened in that one game. Yeah. I mean, that was a kid playing out there, DC, and just becoming more pocket aware. If that was a problem before, we would have heard it before that. Sure. And I don't think, like I said, I think it's greatly exaggerated. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't need to catch on it. Ty Simpson, I think, is a guy that we can win with as well. I think we can win with both of these guys because of the style of offense. And I think he brings a more polished passer coming out of high school. Now, whether Jalen has closed that gap or not, I do not know. But I think Ty is he's going to look more like the Bryce Young and the Tua than in terms of passing. I think you will see Jalen Milroe look more like, Jalen Hurts of the Eagles last year, not necessarily the Jalen Hurts where he was coached to take the ball, tuck, throw it, make one read, and throw it out of bounds. I think that the advantage that Ty has is that there's a coach that loved him out of high school who is now his offensive coordinator. So you have to think that Reese knows that, or he felt like this guy could do his offense or perform his offense at a high level. And so I think that could work to Ty's advantage because of the prior knowledge of what he does for this offense. And he may give more variety in the passing game and the play action game, where Milroe gives you more in the play action pass than run game, dual threat game.
Right. Well, I think if both of those players, we got those two quarterbacks in the quarterback room, and everybody talks about our quarterback room may not be as good, but then you got behind them two freshmen, Dylan Lonergan and Eli Holstein. I think Holstein has all the tools of athletic ability, what I've heard, just young and raw talent. And Dylan Lonergan, I think, has been slowed for the type of injury that he had that he's trying to get over with. So I'm not sure how much we'll see them in this game, but I think all the stuff about Alabama's quarterback room not being very good this year is really just blown out of proportion, in my opinion, unless you have disagreement on that.
I do not have a disagreement on that. I think DC, there's a long way from having Jalen, Tua, Mac, Bryce, and not having a good quarterback. Right. I think there's a lot of room between, I would say that I feel like they have as much talent or ability as the guy we won a national championship with in Coker. Then I would say I'd take these two guys at the beginning of a season over that guy at the beginning of a season if I didn't have any additional knowledge. So, like I said, I think it's over-exaggerated. I will tell you that what I did get to see from Holstein, or what I've seen from Holstein and Lonergan, is they are quick readers, DC, meaning that they're decisive. When they see the guy, they pull the trigger, which is good for a young quarterback to have confidence to let the ball go. And they made a couple of passes that, man, they were really impressive passes by both of them. And so, do we want to go in with freshman quarterback? Probably not. But here's the thing, DC. How many times through the years have we seen redshirt freshmen start at quarterback? Not at Alabama. I'm talking about just in college in general. That's not that big a deal, right?
That's right.
These guys are the equivalent, even though like Ty Simpson is a redshirt freshman, but this is his second spring.
Correct.
And a whole summer. Okay? So he's been through 2 springs, and before he starts a game, he would have been through 2 summers. Jalen Milroe has been through what, 3 springs? Mm-hmm. DC, let me tell you my story. I came in, I reported, and 4 weeks later, I was in my first game. That's how quick and then I was a scout team guy. So by the time I got to spring, I've been on campus for almost a year and had not, got that. These guys have been on campus and they've been through, like I said, multiple springs, multiple summers, multiple off seasons. And so they're so much more mature and advanced. And that's not to count how many 7-on-7s and camps and all these things that these guys have gone through compared to what we went through years ago. And I think we lose that when we start talking about young players.
Well, 2 things I think that help a young quarterback, when quote unquote young, which we know they're not young, but first year starter, is always going to be a good running game and an upgrade at receiver, people who can catch the ball and get open. And I think Alabama has done a good job this year of adding a piece to the puzzle, it looks like, in the wide receiving core that's really looked good. And by that, I mean Malik Benson. I think Malik Benson, number 11, if you're coming to T-Town to watch the game, look for number 11. I think his speed's going to jump off the page at you when you see him. But I think he has some route running ability and pass catching ability, ball tracking ability that's really good too, what I've heard. Then you got Ja'Cory Brooks, you've got Jermaine Burton. And then what I'm hearing, anytime Coach Saban mentions a name, your ears perk up. You don't call people by name very often, but Kendrick Law has really come on as a big time a change of his body type guy. Got his body in great shape this year, and you got Isaiah Bond. So wideout position seems to be an upgrade from where we were this time last year.
Hey, without a doubt, I think that's definitely a huge upgrade, DC. And maybe we start referring to these guys as you'll get a kick out of this as law firms. I mean, you can have Prentice, Bond, and Law. You can have Benson, Bond, and Prentice. I mean, here's the thing. I think Burton may be the odd man out of these guys because Prentice. I think Prentice has gotten bigger and faster and stronger. Law is a Debo Samuel type player. Bond, we saw him getting better as it went on. Then they interject Benson into it and Brooks into it. Maybe we need to, what is it? The three Bs, Benson, Brook, and Bond. Well, I guess it's four of them. I mean, maybe Burton, we may have our version of the Killer Bees.
The thing that jumped out to me about Malik Benson, and I bet you could speak to this too, not what he's doing in the field, but whatever he's doing on the field enough to impress a Bryce Young to let him catch balls for him at his pro day. Now that's got to be that's more impressive than most people have talked. Nobody's talked about that a lot. You mentioned it, but nobody's talking about. Hey, that's impressive if you get someone who's not your quarterback right now and get you to catch passes for you at your pro day. That should tell you something.
It speaks volumes because on pro day it's all about timing.
Yes.
Of routes, and it's all about knowing. The quarterback wants to know that if I call a corner route, that guy's going to run at the same speed, make the cut at the same point each time. So it definitely speaks to Benson's route running consistency, DC, as well as his hands, because even though the quarterback can throw it perfectly on pro day, if you drop it, it reflects on the quarterback because they report the stats as 21 of 22 or 21 of 38. So you want a guy who not only runs great routes, so you get the timing down, but also that can catch the ball. And so I was impressed with that. I had not thought about it the way until you just said that.
Well, what I was impressed with was everybody's the scouting report on Benson is, he's the take the top off guy, his speed guy, and he probably is. But don't discount his route running ability or his hands because he would have been picked to catch the ball by Bryce Young if he didn't have good hands and couldn't run the routes. And Bryce Young's had obviously seen something about that. Well, let's move to the other part of the catching, of which I think is going to be really big in Tommy Rees's offense. That is a tight end room, which we thought might have been a problem area. But Alabama did some movement in the transfer portal and brought in a guy from Maryland, C.J. DePierre. I think he's number 81. You can watch him on your in your guide when you watch the game. You got Amari Niblack, number 84. You got Danny Lewis, number 87. Robbie Oots has been injured, so these guys have gotten more playing time. And you've had a player get in the portal and transfer. That should tell you that we got a pretty good tight end room as well to go along with these good wide receivers.
Yeah, and I would add Kilselman to that room as well. I think that tight end is probably the biggest upgrade of all our positions, in my opinion. And it's not just because we went out and got new talent. I think Dupree definitely makes a difference, DC, and takes it over the top. But I think what we saw happening with Niblack and Lewis, when you see their bodies, we have some athletic tight ends. Kilselman, who was more of a bulky kind of looking guy, not as bulky as, of course, Oots, but if you see him now, he looks more like a Brock Bauer type of athlete playing in space. And I think Dupree and Kilselman gives us a special weapon, DC, because I think you're going to see some two-back offense, and the tight end's going to line up on the end line. And if you come out to stop us, the run, I think you're going to see those guys pop out. And all of a sudden, now you got a linebacker moving out in space to stay with those guys. And to me, tight ends is a first-time quarterback's best friend because the majority of their routes are where, DC, right across the
Right across
front,
the middle. Right
right,
in
right
the
in
face.
their face. Face. They don't have to be great readers necessarily. So I think that our tight end room is the biggest upgrade. And think about this: where do you think Latu would be if
Yeah.
really if it wasn't a loyalty thing from a talent standpoint? He may be the fourth, fifth best
Yeah.
guy, and that's not even counting what Oots is going to do from I think from a 2-3 tight end set of what he'll bring to the table.
So that brings us to our running back room. You got Jace McClellan, you got Roydell Williams, and Jam Miller that we all know about. But man, the person I've been hearing all the things about is Justice Haynes. I heard he came in with a physique that was carved out of stone, with a mindset of football from a father who is really poured into his life. Has all the tools to be a big time running back at Alabama. And, uh, and then we got Richard Young coming in this summer. So I think our running back room is going to look pretty good when you add those two 5-stars together. What are you hearing as a running back yourself? What are you hearing about Justice Haynes?
But Justice Haynes is as advertised as they used to say back in the day when you stayed up late at night and watched television, as advertised on TV. So as advertised in the recruiting racks, Justice Haynes is a legit uh, running back. DC. I think he and Jam Miller. I don't know that they'll be starters this year, but I give you two names and just expect them to be these types of guys, even if even if they're not the two starters. Mark Ingram, Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, that's
They will and Jam Miller is probably more of the Mark McMillan. I mean not Mark McMillan. Ingram. Mark McMillan, boy, that was a flashback
back
to
to
uh,
the old days.
36 years ago, but 35 years ago. But I think both of those guys. And one of the things you hadn't heard, DC, is Miller actually had a 90 plus yard run in the last week's scrimmage. Um, there was so much praise heaped on Haynes afterwards that people kind of missed that
Yeah.
story and missed that stat. But I think those two I think he was the best running back on the team last year, to be honest with you.
I think so. He
Uh,
showed flashes of brilliance last year, and I don't think he got enough playing time last year. So I look for him and Justice Haynes. And wow, add Richard Young in the summer. We're going to have a stacked NFL 5-star quality running back field. I love those comparisons that you give him because I think both of those guys, Miller and Haynes, have proven they can take the ball out of the backfield in a passing opportunity as well, which might come to pass. Lastly, on the offensive line, let's go to offensive line. We talked a little bit about it and the change and the culture there. I've heard nothing but good things about Wolford, and a little surprised that Elijah Pritchett is leading on that line, but not really. If you want to watch, he's number 57. If you're coming and want to watch in the game, but you got Tyler Booker. Seth McLaughlin has really been so excited. Every time I've heard him speak, he's excited about running the ball. I mean, we've got some real excitement in this offensive line about running the ball and imposing their will on the other side. So we've got a really good front there. Plus, you got Darren Davenport. Where is he fall in the mix? You got J.C. Latham and Tyler Booker, who really work well together. But I talked to you earlier this week, and you have a little tidbit about a local talent that you might see get some playing time down the road. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Wilkin Formby doing well. I was just so happy to see how much he had improved. DC from high school to first year on campus, it just shows you how important that first off season can be for a young player. Now, is he ready to break into the first group? No, probably not. But he got a lot of reps with the twos at right tackle from what I was able to see, and got a few over at left tackle. So good to see. I love when local guys go and improve. But if he stays on this trajectory, we'll see Wilkin Formby running out there with that first group at some point in the future in his career.
So I guess the alarmist who said all of our offensive linemen were transferring were not really correct at that. We had some, Javion Cohen, Brockemeyer goes out and gets in the transfer portal. but doesn't seem to have hurt us that much from what I'm hearing and what we got left. One of the Brockemeyer brothers actually stayed. I think he's still on campus, still playing. And then you've got these young guys. I've heard that Caden Proctor is as advertised as well as far as being a big guy. When you said that Tyler Booker might be the smallest one on there, you were being serious. Some of these young guys are pretty big, and I think have been making an impact during the practices. Talk about some of the young guys on the line.
Yeah, before I go to the young guys, DZ, you said something that I he's one of my favorite players just from a look standpoint, and that is Elijah Pritchard.
Yeah.
He reminds me so much of one of my favorite NFL linemen, Tyler Smith, with the Dallas Cowboys, that wears the it's a knee brace, but he wears it on his arm.
On his arm.
Yeah, so that just gives you. But Pritchard has done well, and I think Dalcourt may be the guy that could potentially get lost in the shuffle. But don't be surprised if Dalcourt doesn't surprise some people with better coaching and a different style offense where he's able to put his butt down and drive block versus having to worry about snapping and centering and all of that. But these young guys that they have, DC, McLaughlin, he's holding on, and it's kind of strange to think that McLaughlin at 300 pounds and Dalcourt at like 305 are like small. Someone told me they were too small for us to be a power running team. And I told him, I said, we didn't have a 300 pounder on the 92 team, much less being small. But you just look at this offensive line. I think Wolford has shown that he can coach, DC. He can flat out coach. So
the reason I'm laughing is we've gone a long way from Jerry Duncan at guard at 164 pounds, haven't we, Martin? And those of you out there old like I am, you know who Jerry Duncan is. You know he was a great lineman at Alabama.
That's Proctor's right leg.
That's right. That's right.
Minus his big toe.
Well, I think that concludes us talking about the offense. Let's move over to the defense. And if you're watching still, this is DC Capstone Report live. Martin Houston, special guest today. We're doing a live preview on the A-Day game. And I think Martin will have this replaying later on, maybe tomorrow on all of his platforms. I want to thank Max Sports for making this possible for us today. Lance Shores for getting it out on his sites for oldtimebama.com and freelancepictures.com. And, of course, our sponsor today, Karen Cottingham Realtor, here in Tuscaloosa for all your real estate needs. Her number is 205-887-4008. Let's move over to the defense. Let's start in the back and work our way to the line. I think our line, in my opinion, is going to be our most needed help there. Let's look at the back end. You got Terriana Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Both have been progressing well, according to Coach Saban, at the corner position. You got Earl Little Jr., number 20. I think he's another cornerback been hearing a little bit about. But in that safety position, I hear that there's a freshman that has walked on campus and has really turned heads. His name is Caleb Downs, number 2. And I've heard some comparables of people that I know that started as a freshman. So tell me a little bit about what you've heard about Caleb Downs in our defensive backfield.
Yeah, the irony, one of my coworkers, actually his son played Little League with Caleb Downs, and this guy said he's been kind of was a quiet kid, but kind of the best player DC the entire time. And when he stepped foot on campus, it's been no different. He has stepped up. He's already in the rotation, I think, with the first 5 out, definitely with the first 6. And I will not be surprised if he's not one of those that Coach Saban referred to yesterday as somebody who may be starting as one of those freshmen. And I think Caden Proctor would probably be the other one.
Well, you got Caleb Downs, you got Earl Little Jr. We've seen some people transfer out. I think Traquan Fagans, Robinson transferred out, others in the defensive backfield. So there must be a lot of competition going on there, and people transferring out didn't think they were going to get playing time. So I think we may see some of the other younger people step up, like Devontae Smith, who has been showing out really good, I think, in practices as well, getting some playing time in that backfield. You know, Coach Saban likes to rotate, likes to have a star and a couple of people at star, a couple of people at nickel. So, and especially them starting on special teams, I see a lot of young people getting playing time in the backfield, don't you?
I totally agree with that. And DC, I would say that um, those guys leaving, you hate to see it, but it's kind of expected um, for two reasons. One is with the transfer portal, guys don't stay and fight anyway. But we had Hank South 247 Sports on with us yesterday, and he said that Alabama had 88 or 89 players on scholarship. So they had to lose 3 to 4 guys regardless. So I think that's why you heard Saban kind of
Yeah.
talk about what he talked about. But when you circle back with those young guys stepping in, I do think the fact that you had a couple of young guys in downs, little step up. It made a couple of the older guys kind of take notice. Robinson being one, and then Fagan, being the other. I think that tells you that we had some talent come in at that position. That they immediately went into the portal when it opened. That speaks to the competition as much as anything. So uh, definitely an interesting time. I think that a guy that gets overlooked because um, he was not necessarily a guy that we knew what he would do when he got here. Is Story. I've heard he's had a really good spring. Christian
Yeah.
Story, the Alabama all-time like leading scorer, quarterback, or
Yeah.
passing yards. I can't remember which record he had, but it was a quarterback. And so I think we sometimes skip on him on defense.
And I think he can contribute as well. Let's move up a little bit to the inside linebackers, a place where a lot of people have gotten some playing time this summer because of the injuries that's kept some people out. No Henry Toto anymore. He's going on to the NFL. Deontay Lawson is out. Jalen Moody's moved on. Deontay Lawson's been hurt. So it's had an opportunity for some other people to get some playing time. And I've heard that the Georgia transfer, Tresman Marshall, that's number 17 if you're coming to watch A-Day, I've heard he's had some opportunity to show some flashes, if you will, in the middle linebacker. What are you hearing about Tresman Marshall?
He's had a really, really strong spring, and he's benefited, I think, from the fact that he has a new position coach who doesn't have any preconceived notions about any of the guys on staff. Mm-hmm. And so I think he'll definitely be a contributor, DC. But the most exciting part for me is the coach Bala himself at the inside linebacker position. I've heard that the guy can flat out coach. And so you think about all that talent we've had over the years and this is not to knock Pete Golding, but we've not felt like we've maximized our linebacker position, especially inside. It's exciting to hear that this coach has the ability to get the best out of them, and Marshall is one of those guys that's benefited.
And it's not a knock on Pete Golden either, but Pete Golden was asked to do two things: coordinate an entire defense and then try to concentrate on middle linebackers. And
not easy.
Not easy to do. Uncle Bud always told me that you try to do two things, you can't do either one of them very well. So I know we try to multiply that for people to do that, but I think we've got the right. I've heard a lot of great things about Richard Bala and what he can do in teaching, translating it down so that the people get it. And I think I've seen that. You see that coming off, and I agree with you on that. Outside linebacker, we've had some injuries there. Well, and we've had some people get a lot of playing time. I've heard a lot about Jeremiah Alexander. He's number 35. If you're coming to watch, you'll be able to pick him out. That he's had a good spring. But I was talking to you the other day, and you told me about somebody that maybe has fallen off our radar a little bit that had a real quick step at the outside linebacker position. Tell us about Quindarius Robinson, right?
Quindarius Robinson, I was at the practice, and so he got off the corner so quick. I was like, okay, who is that? I looked and I was like, who is that? Who is that? But these linebackers, Alexander Robinson, his get off was amazing. 6'5", DC, 231, long, lean, athletic. Jeremy Alexander, a little more thick body, but he slimmed up a lot and looking athletic. a guy that we may see a flash from as well. And I know you don't ever want your starters out, but we've had 1, 2, and 3 out. You know, 3 of our top linebackers out, and I heard that Canoe Colt uh, um, has taken advantage of his opportunity as well. So one of the guys I hadn't heard anything a lot about is the JUCO transfer. So I don't really know much about Justin Jefferson, but I've not heard a lot either
Yeah,
way.
I haven't heard much about him either, but I think a part of that is because some other guys have really taken advantage of the opportunity, and you're hearing more about them as well. Not knocking Justin Jefferson, he may well be the real deal as well. But you know, when Dallas Turner's not there, and you don't have Chris Braswell, the people that you know would normally lead in those positions, it's good to hear some of these other people that we've heard a little bit about stepping up and getting some playing time. Well, that finally.
And DC, I would say a name to look for tomorrow. If they're wanting to watch the inside linebacker position that we did not mention, is Jahad Campbell. He moved from outside linebacker to inside linebacker last year, and I think he's really learning to play the position. So with Balla's coaching, don't be surprised if it's not him and Lawson out there. The only problem is I think he's been running in Lawson's stead right now.
He's number
And
30 if you want to watch for him
yeah,
tomorrow as well. So,
and that sometimes can hurt you because I tell people the reason we hurt Dallas Turner versus Braswell is because Braswell was the backup to Will Anderson and Turner was the backup to Drew Sanders. Drew Sanders got hurt and Turner never relinquished.
right.
We could see some of that with Jahad Campbell as well, but I hope that when he comes back that they figure out how to keep him engaged and on the field if indeed he has been running just Lawson's spot.
We're coming up on the end of our live broadcast, but we're going to get to that final, that line. I saved it for the last because we've heard people talk about, we've heard other players talk about Jamil Burroughs and what he's brought in the summer. Really, really good play. And we've heard about Jaheim Otis continuing to slim down and really making the difference. But outside of those two, I hadn't heard a lot about what's going on defensive line, and I think that was a weakness last year. My opinion may not be yours. You can speak to that. I think our defensive line may have been a weakness. I spoke to you why I think that is. Maybe they weren't being pushed in practice, but I think that definitely culture has changed. The difference in the offensive line has changed. Maybe that's bringing some meanness out in the defensive line. We still have the same defensive line coach. What are you hearing about defensive line, and what can our spectators look for in this line? I'm just a little concerned about this group, but maybe I'm off base on this.
Well, I'm not necessarily let me say it correctly, concerned as a group, but I think they have a ceiling that they've not reached. If that makes sense.
It does.
I think you can add, Tim Smith a year older. I think he will be, a difference maker. And I'll let you share what your thoughts are on him in just a second. But DC, the other part to me that we didn't talk about that happened last year that I think hurt our defense and hurt Will Anderson. It's hard to think that Will Anderson was hurt and could have performed high. But when we went to that, when Justin Eboigbe went out with injury, we didn't talk about the fact that that's when Will Anderson started playing a lot more third lineman snaps.
Yes.
And I think Justin Eboigbe and Jaheim Otis and Tim Smith and Jamil Burrow and Jamarian Latham, I think those guys can be a formidable group, DC. But a guy that I'm not exactly sure how they're gonna play him totally, but he flashed in the scrimmage, and that's true freshman James Smith, 6'3", 296. Mm-hmm. He was playing that third outside, more defensive end type on the backside when we would have, a defensive end at a lineman at the outside position. I think you throw him in the mix, DC, and I think we're going to have a pretty good defensive line. I will say this and be quiet, but Saban said that he was disappointed in the defensive line development.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't mean that they're not performing at a high level. I think he thinks that there's just some being left on the table. And he didn't say anything negative about the coach, but that has a reflect on Freddie. And so hopefully you're going to see Freddie and his group take it to the next level in intensity and nastiness.
Well, I think that was an invitation for Freddie Roach to step it up. I think that he didn't say it, but anytime a coach questions the development, it has to go on the position coach, I think. And I know what he's talking about because in the days past when we had a defensive line, it was like plug and play. We could bring somebody out, run somebody in, and we didn't have a fall off. In the days of Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne and those few players that came through. Well, it was at a spring game. I believe I told you after a spring game. I told you after seeing this young man jump off the page at me that he was going to be a next Alabama star, and that person's name was Quinion Williams. I remember telling you that before anybody knew who he was. Well, this time, based on what I'm thinking, I'm gonna put that label on Tim Smith. I think that Tim Smith has the ability to really up his game, and if he gets some good direction, along with the culture change that Kevin Steele brings, I believe he, along with Jamil Burroughs, have an ability to push that middle to get pressure on the quarterback. And I don't think we've had that. Didn't have it last year, I don't believe. That may be due to some injuries of the way we played. But I think we were relying more on our outside linebackers to get the quarterback than we were our middles. And I think Byron Young had a great year last year getting to the quarterback. That really people ignore that because of how good pressures, Will Anderson and Dallas Turner got on the quarterback. But Byron Young does a great job. So the opportunities are there. And I think if we take advantage of them, Tim Smith is going to be a guy to look for to kind of jump off the page at you this year. So everyone can look for him to play this. And I hope he has a big game in the 8A game, just like Quinion Williams did before him years ago and kind of spring on the scene.
I agree with that, DC. I think Tim Smith has a huge opportunity. I think Jaheim Otis' weight loss is going to, if he didn't lose any strength, DC, that's going to be a game changer because even though last year he played well, you could block him sometimes with one guy.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't necessarily fleet of foot. Not saying he's fleet of foot now.
Right.
But he's quick enough now that if you miss him, then he's going to get to your quarterback.
Most definitely.
Where last year he could be a run stopper. I think he can do both this year. And as well as I do, DC, if you can get a push from the center and then the guards are getting pushed back, and then you can compress on that quarterback and not create run lanes. I think last year Dallas Turner and Will Anderson were so good that they would get so far up the field and our defensive line wouldn't get enough push that it created passing lanes or running lanes or escape lanes for quarterbacks. I think you'll see a more cohesive rush to the quarterback, which in turn leads to more sacks and more interceptions as you get in that quarterback's face.
Well, I want to thank everybody for watching today, and Martin will have this out on his platforms later on schedule. You can watch it back later if you tell your friends about it. But before we leave today, I want Martin to tell us about what he's got going on. Go ahead and tell us about Max Sports and what you and Xavier have going there and other things that you've got going on. Just let all our listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to be on with you today, DC. Returning the favor, sitting on the other side of the desk was a lot of fun. But Monday through Friday, I get the privilege of hosting the Martin Houston Show with Martin and Xavier on Monday through Friday from 6 to 7 a.m. It's powered by Max Sports, which is Martin and Xavier Sports. So Max Sports. And we do it every day. And DC is our regular guest. He sits with us the entirety of the show on Tuesday. So get your DC fix on Tuesdays by tuning into the Martin Houston Show. But we broadcast live on all our various networks. Follow at Martin Houston 35 the Martin Houston Fan Page 35 on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all those different things. And we broadcast on DC's program on those days as well. And so give us a like, follow, share, and let your friends know about us. And hey, if they don't want to do it on Facebook or whatever, and they say, I don't do that Facebook stuff, tell them to download the app from Tide 100.9 DC, and they can follow us there. So, and as far as the replay of the show, what I'm going to do when we get off here, we'll reset this thing, DC, and it'll play 3 or 4 times today throughout the rest of the day. So it'll pop up. So if you missed the beginning of the show, just know that it'll be replaying later on today, and you'll get a little notice of that. But DC, thanks to you and Lance and Karen Cottingham and the whole crew for allowing me to be a guest with you guys today.
We're glad you're on, and thank you for producing it there from Max Sports. We appreciate you doing that for us, sitting out on all the platforms. And I'm glad you mentioned Lance. If you're listening to this and you're coming to A-Day and you want a good perspective after you leave and go home, Lance is going to be here. He's going to take photographs, and they'll be up on his site, freelancepictures.com, rolltidebama.com. You can get some great shots. If you have a cheerleader during the football season, if you have a cheerleader, $1 million band parent, Lance is your man to get pictures of him. So you reach out to Lance Shores there at freelancepictures.com. He does a great job of taking pictures. And it's rolltidebama.com is account as well. As Martin said, I want to thank my sponsor as we go off today, Karen Cottingham, realtor here in Tuscaloosa, for all your real estate needs throughout the state of Alabama. You can contact Karen. She's with Keller Williams with the Williams Group. You can contact her 205-887-4009. I'm DC with the DC.
Say that one more time, DC.
That's Karen Cottingham, 205-887-4008. 4008. 205-887-4008. Her website is www.karen.thewilliamsgroupal.com. I want to thank Karen for sponsoring the DC Capstone Report. Now you can follow me on Twitter at DavidCott50, and you can always follow us at DC Capstone Report Facebook page. So thank you all for tuning in today. Again, big thank you to Martin Houston for producing this and being our guest today. So that's it for the day. We'll see you at A-Day.
All right. Thanks, DC, and everybody out there, Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.